couple of things. One, for those of you who don't know it, the shopping center in Grogan's Mill has now been subject to a swap deal with between the county and the Howard Hughes Corporation, and apparently both sides are seriously considering it, and be a long time before it happens. But this all happens in Mud 6, and we should be aware of it. The other thing that is of importance these days that everyone should be aware of is what is happening in the legislature, and most particularly in case of House Bill 1540 as amended, and which would have allowed the immediate replacement of the current general manager, Jace Hughes, after a period of time. That does not look like it's going to happen, but it is something that we should all be aware of. The House has not put the legislation on its, or the Senate has not put it on for the floor yet for a full vote, but it will probably happen this week. Neil, would you, as the Education Committee guy, would you like to?
Okay, sure. I'd like to do a deep dive now into the House Journal from April 27th, 2023. And this is in relation to what we were just talking about, Bruce. The HB 1540 did pass out of the House Natural Resources Committee, where the representative who made the amendment just alluded to, Representative Will Metcalf, he's a member, but apparently he did not propose the amendment in committee, but on the House floor, and justifying it in this way, speaking about the San Jacinto River Authority. This river authority is largely funded in large part by my constituents, and I ask for your support of this important amendment for my district. Now, I think this is worth a Pinocchio Award. We really have to reflect on that claim. I think if we look at the territorial extent of where the river authority has authority, it's for the San Jacinto River Basin, with the exception of Harris County, absent that part of Lake Conroe, Lake Houston, which is the source for industrial and other water supplied further south and east. So, and of course, there's the woodlands we're in. There's a huge investment of infrastructure. So we have to really think about that one. Anyway, I just wanted you to be aware of that. Now, it has gone to or it has been through the Senate Water, Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, and they rejected the amendment, and they substituted their committee wording, which is the original Senate bill and the original House bill, and that's what's going to the Senate floor for a vote.
Yeah. Now, there is nothing that we can do here, but at least I think, or hope, that by talking about it and having it videotaped, we can get some people perhaps to look at it and hear what has been said as a means of stirring action. And we think that people in the community should get involved and contact Senator Metcalf or Senator Creighton, Congressman Metcalf, and others to let their feelings be known. We should not have this type of political activity interfering with our water supply. It's just too dangerous. Okay, anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Okay, item 4, consider and act upon request for adjustment or relief. Nothing. Oh, does Jeannie have anything to know?
Sure, doesn't look like it, but
Okay,
I'm not sure.
okay, we will move on then to the consent agenda. Items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Anybody have anything that they'd like to talk about on this, or move it to the regular agenda?
I just had a question on item 6 on the consent agenda for Maureen. There were two entries for fairly substantial amounts to the San Jacinto River Authority, aggregating of water charges, wastewater. That's in the register. I assume that just happened to be when the billing cycle came through. Normally it's once a month, right? That there's
Well, one could be capacity, one could be the,
well, these are the
wholesale.
these are the big numbers, 200 and 4,000 and 200,000. So I assume it's just when the invoice comes in.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay.
For March, one for April, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the items 5 through 8? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will move to approve the consent.
A second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 9. Receive and act upon staff information regarding the upcoming Montgomery County Appraisal District Board of Directors election for the term of office January 2023 through December 2024. Brian, do you want to?
So that is the item that we have for each of these election cycles. We put it on all the MUD agendas because we weren't sure which district, because typically we do have a district that does indicate they want to have the districts be able to participate in the nomination process. Metro MUD actually did that on Monday night, so there's nothing that y'all need to do. This is the first step of a convoluted 3-step process.
Okay,
So the next step will be, we will come back and get a nomination. And then the final step, we will come back and among the nominees, the board will vote on who the preferred candidate is. So right now, we do have Arthur Breeden Hall, who is serving. He's a MUD member on Metro MUD. He had made the effort to be selected as a special district candidate, but we still had the inconsistency in treatment between the township and the MUD, so we weren't on the same page as who the candidate would be. That's been the last few cycles. Before that, the MUDs and the township had been aligned, and we were able to get a candidate on. Township has enough votes because votes are based on the assessment. So how much taxes are assessed by the taxing jurisdiction, because the township has such a huge tax base, even though their tax rate is relatively modest. They have a very large say in that selection process. They can't on their own determine who a winning candidate would be there, but their support is necessary, but not.
Okay. Do they have a candidate yet?
What Arthur indicated at the Metro MUD meeting was that he felt that he had a good chance to get township support this time. So.
And I believe the same. I think we're coming back into alignment as of, we've met with the township on this specific topic as of this morning.
Okay,
That sounds good.
so there's nothing we have to act
Nothing
on?
to do on step 1. We'll be back to you, and then you'll need to take
Okay.
action on step 2.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10, receive the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report. Chris?
Don't have anything to add to the information in your packet, but Haley does have the budget 2%.
You have a slideshow if y'all want to.
Get out of the way.
So as
We know when we're not
We need to
needed.
pull it down.
I think good.
I think we're good.
Okay. I think we're good.
It's down already.
Oh, okay. We'll see what happens.
It's pulled down too far.
Yeah, it'll just turn off.
It'll come down more.
Pulled down.
So as Chris mentioned, my name is Haley Lawhon and I am the Woodlands accountant for SRA. So I do have the budget for fiscal year 24 to present to y'all today. This one is for y'all's information, and the vote for the approving the budget is going to happen in July at the individual MUD meetings, and then the trustees vote is in August, and then
40. Oh, there it goes.
There we go.
Now we're good.
Thank
Thank you. It takes a woman to fix it, right?
so in your packets, this
Neil, just saying,
presentation
no comment.
is in your,
That's right.
Ain't nothing like Kelly.
Silence is assent. What's that in Latin? Like, you know, when you're in agreement, you stay silent in the law. Yeah,
No, cogito ergo sum.
there you go.
right, so in your packets, this presentation is in your packets as well as our draft budget document. So there's 7 pages in here that have the draft budgets. We do have multiple because we have the operating, future facilities, repair and replacement, and our capacity bond budget. So the first 3 that are in here, starting on page 38, is our operating budget. 3 pages. I skipped over very first page in here on page 36 is an executive summary that Chris put together that has kind of the highlights of some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So this is an overview presentation tonight for y'all's information. Like I said, the vote will be in July at the individual meetings. We do have a more detailed presentation that we're hosting tomorrow. If you would like to join us for that, it is tomorrow at 5:30 to 7:30. If you'd let Summer Foster know at our company, she's taking the RSVPs for that meeting. With that, we can get started into the actual presentation. So when we're putting together our budget, we do have several things that we consider and that we look at as the basis for our budget. So we're going to talk about just a few of those things here as to get us started into this presentation. So the first thing we look at is our sales and our demands and how much do we think we're going to produce and produce water-wise and treat wastewater from our plant, and how much of that do we think we'll be able to sell. So we are changing our water loss percent from 9% to 5.5% from FY23 to 24. So that does increase our sales in how much that we are able to sell of the amount of water that we produce. Our wastewater amount is going to stay constant. Our wastewater demands will stay constant from 23 to 24. We also look at different cost increases that we're seeing in the current year and just historically in general. Several of the things that we saw last year, we're still seeing this year, which is chemicals, sludge hauling, electricity, and payroll. And the last thing there is the public communications consultants. As y'all know, we have a lot of projects coming up in the Woodlands, and we were asked to help facilitate a consultant to help with the education campaign to get the residents informed about those projects coming in. So you will see that in our budget. The next thing that we're looking at is our project plan. We do have our project plan that we update annually. And in order to be able to fund those projects that are funded through our R&R, which is repair and replacement fund, we do make a transfer from our operating to the R&R fund. This year, we're keeping that transfer at $6 million, which is the same as last year. And the last thing we look at is our blend ratio on how much groundwater and surface water we are going to produce and provide. So we are keeping our blend ratio at 50-50 for FY24. So there are several things in the budget that we have been asked to look at year over year. So we just wanted to give you an update on a few things. The USGS stream monitoring that is in the Woodlands, there's 7 gauges in the Woodlands. They are staying, but they have found other funding partners for those stream gauges. So you will see that $75,000 is taken out of our FY24 budget, but there's $6250 still in there because we do have to go through the end of the contract, which goes through the first month of our fiscal year. The second one is our lobbyists that we're working with to get more information for some funding sources. We are ending this contract, but it is the same situation. We are continuing to pay through the end of the contract, which is December. So you will see $40,000 in the budget for the lobbyists, which is Frederick.
Sorry about that.
All right. So on this slide, this is the kind of summary of different categories that are on in the budget that is in your packet, the first 3 pages of our operating budget. This is just an overview of the categories on there for y'all to see in the presentation. But I have some more slides to go over some of these items in more details.
While you're on the slide, do you want to go ahead and cover the top left GRP?
Yeah. Okay, caught me ahead of time. So our GRP fees have a slight change, but the rate is not changing. So the cost to buy water from GRP to then sell to the Woodlands is going to stay the same for FY 23 to 24. So that rate is $2.99 for per 1,000 gallons for groundwater, $3.41 per 1,000 gallons for surface water, which also, because we kept the blend ratio the same and the fee did not change, your blended rate is staying the same at $3.20 per 1,000 gallons for what we bill for the months for cost of the water. So on this slide, we just wanted to kind of cover the operating reserve target that we have and where that target comes from. And it is based on a contract with y'all, with all the MUDs, that we keep 3 months worth of expenses in our operating reserve. So our operating reserve is increasing because the expenses are increasing from 5.3 to 5.6 FY 23 to 24. So you will see that in the budget, and the other cash sources uses section is a $200,000 or so increase to our operating reserve. And that is just so that we can mark those funds as essentially reserved for operating fund in our requirement. And our reserve is fully funded at this time for FY 23. So we'll just need to bump it up just a little bit when 24 starts. So on this slide, we're just looking at the rates and looking at the change in our 23 rate to the proposed 24 rate and what makes up that difference there. So on the water side, you'll see that the total increase to the rate is 5 cents. 23 cents of that is made up from the water loss savings, because when we changed our percent from 9% to 5.5%, then we're able to sell more water, produce the same amount. So we're getting a benefit there of 23 cents to be able to sell more water, basically. But our expenses are going up. So that's what you'll see there with that 28 cents, which nets to that 5 cent difference. There is no water loss benefit on the wastewater side, so it is zero there. But since our expenses are going up still with wastewater, it's still a 12-cent increase on the wastewater rate. So all in all, it's about a 2% increase on water and 2% increase on wastewater, which brings us to $2.78 per 1,000 gallons for water and $5.65 per 1,000 gallons for wastewater. So as I said in the beginning, one of the things that we're looking at with our increased expenses is chemicals. Our chlorine cost is going up. We buy our chlorine by the ton. April to April is our typical contract, and they did raise our prices for us this past April here. So we're already with our higher prices from $17.47 a ton to $22.39 per ton. So up $500 per ton just already. So we'll see that even greater effect in the FY 24 budget for chlorine and then some of the other chemicals going up. Yes.
Can I ask a question? It might be of Chris, but I noticed that even with my swimming pool, costs and chlorine products have doubled, if not tripled in the last 3 years, but the supply chain has gone away. So is it just turned into a monopoly or oligopoly? There's only a couple of companies making it, and that's the game? That's it.
That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. No choice.
Competition should take share.
So one of the other things that we look at is our staffing needs to make any adjustments annually to the direct staff and indirect staff that we have to keep the Woodlands going. There is a decrease in our direct FTEs this year of 0.7 and an increase of 2.88. The next slide does cover a little bit more detail on exactly what is part of those changes. The other thing that we look at with our staffing is our budget, or staffing budget assumptions that we look at is the 4% merit and promotions and 2% inflationary adjustment, which is our cost of living adjustment. So as you can see, our direct FTE has been decreasing over time from fiscal year 17 to now. So on the next slide, this one shows all of those first departments and divisions to the left are indirect departments. And that last one there that says Woodlands is our direct FTE group for, yes, the Woodlands. So all of those changes from 23 to 24, you can see the description here of kind of why it changed, why we needed the adjustment, if you're curious. The main driver, of course, is the projects we have coming up in the Woodlands. We need more accounting and tech services staff to handle those projects and getting them done and out the door.
What does reallocation of staff time to actual services mean?
So year over year, if something was budgeted, so let's take admin services, we budgeted for 0.33 last year. We looked at the staffing plan this year when they did their timesheets and everything and how much time they actually spent. And the Woodlands, it was maybe a little bit less than we anticipated it. If that was, accurate, then going forward, then they adjust what they're budgeting, how much time that person or that group might spend to what was really happening in the past year. So your time that they actually spent would be billed correctly, but this budget is built off of historically kind of what happened.
Thank you.
Anything to add on that? And then one of the next things that we're looking at is our electrical cost is going up. So we have, we did look at our historical usage for the last 12 months and it is over our budget. And we are increasing it by 10%. So we did historical for the last 12 months plus 10%. So you'll see that our utilities is going up at 700, 800,000. It is 25% because it's higher 25% than last year's budget, but the direction was to use our historical use plus 10%.
Ask another question.
Yeah.
For Chris.
That's it.
Then what- I gotta ask what's driving the high utility cost? If natural gas prices are coming down and cost of, where's the cost coming from?
That's
No, go right in.
That's one thing that when we met with the trustees and the audit committee, that they were asking the same thing of do we anticipate seeing this high cost going forward because natural gas is coming down. One of the things is when will we see that effect? And we have to budget based on the information we have now. It has to go through rate cases and until that's in place, we don't want to not have enough. So hopefully that will happen and we'll see those changes, but as of now, we have to go on.
Thank you.
So on this slide, you'll see this is a snapshot of certain accounts that are in your operating budget that's in your packet. I went through and I pulled out all of the accounts that have a variance of $20,000, positive or negative, and in 20% variance, positive or negative there to the account. And we put it up here just to give a little bit more information on those accounts that had a larger change to them to provide more information on a particular line item and what the change in the driver is.
That's a huge increase on software and support.
Yes, so we do have a new software that is going live, and because that software is going live, we now have to buy the software, the maintenance and the things that go with that. So that is that digital water that we have a project going on for it, but when it goes live, we do have more things to maintain. Any other questions on this slide? So in conclusion, we have this slide on here just to remind you of the rates that we're proposing for when you vote in July. So the water rate that we're proposing is $2.78 per 1,000 gallons. And the wastewater rate that we are proposing is $5.65 per 1,000 gallons. So if y'all don't have any other questions, that is all I have for you. And like I said, you will vote in July, but trustees is in August, and we do have a meeting tomorrow night. With the information is in your packet on that, which is that. At the end of our presentation, the invitation for that meeting tomorrow is if you want to come and get more information on the budget and the project plan.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Good job.
We have the lights again, Kelly. Eric, anything else from the SRA or?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Item 11, receive an update on SJR-led Spring Creek detention study.
Good afternoon. We had a public meeting maybe 2 weeks ago. There at the township office, we had probably about 60 residents come in and visit and leave comments, gather information. We're still waiting to schedule the next progress meeting with consultant and also evaluate the comments that we received, but nothing that's new to report other than what's transpired in the past.
Thank you, Ed. And Brian, your turn, and you should have a lot to report.
Well, yeah, there's a lot going on. We're down to the last 2 weeks, and it's that time where we can tell you what's dead, but stuff that's not dead, we can't give you any assurance as to whether it's going to pass or what it could look like. I mean, I talked a little bit about one bill in your director comments. There's a number of others still floating around out there. We've talked before about the bill that would change the construction contract bidding thresholds, 3507. That one's still alive. The bill that would change director qualifications to require that a director must be a landowner. You can't be a renter to qualify as a director. That bill is still alive. House Bill 1793. Major bill that passed that will perhaps not have as much of an impact on the Woodlands, but on development throughout the state in general. Senate Bill 2038, it's referred to as the ETJ opt-out bill, will allow for landowners to petition to have their property removed from a city's ETJ, and the city doesn't have the authority to refuse that petition request. That is a major outgrowth of what has been a multi-session battle between cities and the state government. You've probably heard about that, either read about it in the news or talked about it before with the Senate bill session or two ago, I guess maybe 2 sessions ago, that restricted the ability of cities to go and forcibly annex property in their ETJ. That was one of the initial bills. Well, there are a number of other ones that would restrict the ability of cities to regulate any number of things more stringently than what the state would do. So it's come up in terms of oil and gas drilling and some other topics as well. I think there was an article in the Chronicle today about that. So that's been a big battle and continues to be. So that's one bill that is an outgrowth of that. Bill that would we're following the Public Facility Corporation bill. You probably saw the email from AWBD about that, where these public facility corporations, and it's been an issue through the Houston Housing Authority, are acquiring multifamily complexes, and by doing so, changes them to a tax exempt status. And so our districts, it's not as significant of an issue because we have such a wide and diverse tax base. But for smaller districts that have a lot more of their property value that may be coming from 1 or 2 or 3 apartment complexes, and then all of a sudden those go from, maybe $2 million per acre to 0, that's, a big hit on the taxable income that those districts receive. So there's been an effort to change that structure for exemptions. It's still moving. We're cautiously optimistic that something passes there, but that's been a bill that's been an issue that's really picked up steam lately. That's House Bill 2071 fine. That one's still moving on the Senate side. The bill that would have essentially taken the North Harris County Regional Water Authority out of the jurisdiction of the Subsidence District. That bill is dead.
That's good.
Focused on that. the bill that would prohibit districts from being able to exercise authority outside their boundaries. That bill is dead. Bill that would require November elections for bond or tax elections. That bill is dead. The bill that would allow for virtual meetings as long as the presiding officer is at the location of the board meeting, the traditional board meeting. That bill is still alive. This is information as of this week, because I've been in board meetings all week, but a lot is changing every day. But as of this weekend, that bill is still alive. That's House Bill 3811. That's passed the House and is in the Senate. The lobbying bill, that bill, Senate Bill 175, we talked about that last month. That did pass the Senate. It's still pending in the House. Not really sure if that's going to have the legs to get through at this point from the House side. There are a handful of bills out there that would tinker with SB2 and the way you calculate the rollback tax rate and the amount of rollback tax, and how you calculate the increment, the unused increment, if say you don't use all the 3% in 1 year and you roll it forward. So there's some bills that are tinker with that. There's at least one of those that's still alive. Bill that would impact some of the language in our notice to purchasers is still alive, so we're watching for that one as well. Those are some of the omnibus bill that would do some cleanup for a handful of different chapter 49 and 54 of the water code provisions, including modify the per diems for directors, since those haven't been updated for CPI over the years. So it would tie it to what the legislators received, but still be capped out at the 7,200. That bill has passed the House and is over in the Senate, so that one could still pass. But there's a lot of friction right now between the House and the Senate over some pretty high-level issues such as school vouchers, always property taxes. How do you address the surplus that the state has accumulated and give that back to taxpayers through property tax reform? We are expecting that those issues will probably not get resolved in the next 2 weeks and will require a special session. What we don't know is to what extent those bills or those high-level issues could impact bills that have nothing to do with those issues.
Yes, get no time.
Right out of time. Time is one of your biggest adversaries right now if you're trying to get a bill passed in either chamber. And to the extent that these really contentious issues suck the oxygen out of the room or out of the chamber, then you're losing time to pass other bills. So we're very concerned about that for these last 2 weeks for bills that we're working on.
Okay. 2 questions, Brian. One, do you have anything else to add on House Bill 1540 that we should?
No, I mean, I think where it is procedurally is that the language that was approved by the committee, which I understand from hearing from some directors, there was some confusion about what actually left the hearing, because there was.
We thought it was cold course. That was my fault.
Very quick talking at the end of the hearing about it was passed as amended. Well, yesterday, the language of the committee approved version was put on TLO, Texas Legislature Online, so you can see that it did not, it matched what had previously been passed by the Senate. So you're correct, it is with Senator Perry, I believe, still, again, this was as of a day or so ago, and has not gone to the full Senate. Once it gets to the Senate, you're back in the same issue of, is there enough time for a bill to pass? And then the uncertainty about, will there be amendments offered? Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Going back to House Bill 2071, there are a number of apartment houses in Mud 6. You've got Trail Point and you've got Fawn Ridge. You've got, I forget, they keep changing the names up. I'm sorry. The next one down from. Eric, have we by chance had a chance to look at the impact if those properties went to zero?
We have not.
Could you?
Sure.
Yeah, and we've got, of course, a number of district clients that have the issue, and some that have it more significantly than others. Looking at what alternatives, now, if you have a new property that is seeking service, water sewer service, or is wanting to get annexed into the district, you can handle that in a pretty straightforward way as a condition to obtain service. If you've already connected them to your system and they're paying rates as a taxable property, then it gets a lot more complicated. We are looking into what different options may be available. There's been some clamoring about maybe a different rate class for properties that go to tax exempt. There are some challenges with that approach because of potential PUC rate challenges. So to be determined if you have a property. Now, a lot of what your potential remedies are that you would need to explore are going to be dependent on what happens in the session. If there's a bill that passes, what it looks like, that bill would be effective as of September the 1st. So you would really just be dealing with a risk window if something hasn't already gone tax exempt of between the end of the session or between now and September 1st, because what's been proposed in the legislature at this point would, my understanding is, make these projects much, much less financially attractive and would probably drop the spigot.
Okay. Another question, a building like the Villages here, which is a senior home, would that be classified as an apartment under this legislation?
Well, it's multifamily and it's about affordable housing. It's about a percentage of the homes, a percentage of the renters that are under a certain threshold of income. And right now, the threshold is very generous to apartment owners. And one of the state reps, Gary Gates, who owns apartment complexes, actually commented that out of the number of apartment complexes that he owns, he could transfer into this tomorrow and not lower his rent one dime. So part of it would be change. I think part of what's been proposed is to make those requirements much more stringent to make it less financially attractive.
Yeah, there's still a couple of apartment houses in our Bud 6 that might fall for that Fawn Ridge. And the other one, I can't remember the name of.
They're not cheap relatively to what he's offering, I think, they become pretty expensive.
I wouldn't think so either.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Brian?
I think that's.
Okay, thank you. Consider adoption of resolution concerning developed district status, which we come back to, and I think you'll probably have a quick motion for us, Brian?
This is which item, the resolution on developed district status?
Yes,
So
item
we
13.
do have an update on that. You want to go ahead and cover that?
So the change in the numbers from what we're looking at is there are some potential properties that are not part of MUD 6 right now, but could potentially be annexed. So that's where the increase in the potential connections has come from for the district. So what Mike and I were just talking about is we're going to alter our recommendation to leave y'all as developed for now. And then if those annexations ever do come back in the future and it is annexed into MUD 6, then y'all would move to a developing status at that point. But at this point, we're going to leave y'all.
What properties are we talking about?
Around Timberlock and Metro Center. It's where the Millennium Apartments were, or are. Some vacant property or some property that has not been developed. We don't know if it's gonna go into your district, Metro Center, or whomever.
It's
I
not
don't
that
know what the
area.
property's gonna be.
It's not that area, Mike, where Dan Colkhurst was talking about several months ago at the real high-end condo buildings.
On River Row.
Yeah, River Road.
No, that's in,
That's gonna be MUD 6.
yeah, that is in Muncie,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, no, it's not those.
Okay.
We've got those calculated.
So we will get a revised document over to Brian and then get that executed for y'all.
Okay, so we defer it again then, Brian?
I think so. Yeah, so you'll have a revised, as developed for next month.
Okay, thank you. Received the general manager report. Eric, your turn.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to point out a couple of things on my report. First one was to point out the annual hydrant audit and flushing program is complete. We're working through some of the items that were identified in that, and that is proceeding. I want to point out a couple of customer thank yous to our staff, which I always appreciate seeing, both on the in-office side and the field side, both for friendliness and for speed of response. So I'm really happy to see that. I did want to bring up a new idea and topic to the board. I'd like to have, as you know, we've implemented our strategic communication plan through the PEC. We've been doing that this year. I'd like to maybe in future meetings, I've been doing this with all the MUDs, is carve out a little bit of time for John to talk a little bit about what we've been doing as it pertains to the public or the strategic communication plan. In light of the fact that the larger PR campaign is heading right at us later this year, I thought it'd be important to start talking about what we have been doing, because it's going to be even more robust as we move forward.
Would you like him to speak now? That looks like a setup to me.
I do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about what we're communicating, how and to whom. Yeah. If you look at, oh, shit, I didn't mark the page on your packet where you've got your communications.
65.
65, thank you. We'll start with that first bullet there, year-end report. So been working over the last couple of months to get out those year-end reports. They've been really well received. Folks are opening the emails when they go out digitally. We've got an average open rate of 58%.
Very good.
And they're also going out with water bills. And then we're also pushing them via social media as well. And they're all on the website currently. And this is good because this goes directly to the statistics up above that I want to highlight. It really underpins our efforts right now, which is about just getting more information out, period. Folks want to hear from you. They need to hear from you, good, bad, and otherwise. Because with that extra communication comes an extra degree of familiarity and trust, and we are going to need that trust and support, especially during the tough times, when there's a service interruption, when there's a rate hike, when there's something they don't want to hear. So that they need to hear from us a lot and about all things that matter to them. And so to that, I'll read this stat here from the American Waterworks Association research they did. People who recall having received communication from their water utility in the last year report higher satisfaction with their water than those who do not recall any communication. Just us communicating with them, period, has an effect. We want to keep that going. So good job on getting that report out. One thermometer for how we're doing is website traffic. Because a lot of our communications will push towards the website. First, we restructured that a bit, made it a little more navigable, and really got a place for folks to land that puts programs and services right in their lap when they get there. They don't have to hunt for it. So we have seen an uptick in page views over the last 6 months. That's good. We're down quite a bit from if we go back a few years and what we were doing previously. We haven't had any natural disasters in a while. That's one thing we think might have driven people towards us. We're not rooting for that again, but we do want to increase traffic, and we're continuing to work on ways to do that. Of course, we're meeting with folks individually through our outreach events. We've had a few. We were supposed to be at Earth Day. Well, we were at Earth Day last Saturday, and we were so wet. So that got canceled, but continue to get out and meet interpersonally with folks and gather comments that way. Our weekly e-blast, is everyone here getting that? Okay, so that's a key tool for us.
And I haven't watered my lawn in weeks.
Isn't that great?
You do not need to have watered your lawn at all this year. In fact, you can go at this point into June comfortably without even thinking about your. Good job. Yeah, it's been a pretty wet year, so great for me. Yeah, so we're getting 10,000 plus homeowners a month, or excuse me, a week opening that email and reading that. So that's a real important tool for us. Marketing right now is a water quality focus. We're ending the second quarter of our strategic plan, which was on water quality. We're going to shift to water conservation in June. So you'll see a difference in marketing materials. You'll see a different focus in our Woodlands Community Magazine articles and ads there. We've been really successful with the Community Impact and Chronicle. Those are our main two outlets right now. As far as digital advertising, folks are seeing their ads and they're engaging with them. So that's good. Social media, we've got a lot of room to grow. We are working actively on that. And I'll be excited to report some progress on that to you next round. Water bills are important for us as well. And I guess that's about it for the report for now. Any questions?
Yeah, John, what is the viewable click-through rate? How do we
So
understand that?
it's two-weighted. There's all kinds of different metrics in digital advertising. Essentially, folks are clicking.
Mhm.
There are bots that go around and will try to run up metrics. This tries to get around that to where it's an actual person actually looking at it and clicking on it.
Okay.
And the you can see there an industry standard would be about 0.15%. So we doubled that. Well, not quite. We're about 60% above that
Okay.
with CI.
And the interaction rate,
That's
similar.
where they're
story.
scrolling over.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're looking at it, not necessarily clicking through.
Mhm.
Ideally, we want them to click through, but just scrolling at it, seeing it, that's a lot better than it just being there and then not seeing it.
Okay.
Good. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Hey, Eric, anything else?
The only other thing I was gonna note was something from the trustee meeting where we presented a proposed new billing structure or billing software that we're looking at right now. So more to come on that. That's it.
Okay. Item number 15, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees Report. Mr. Gaynor.
Well, it's, again, a lot of it's been covered already, but I would draw your attention just to where we're at, more specifically, as far as I know, that release date for the request for proposal is still valid. The
Yes.
19th, so
Yes.
that'll be going out, and so we anticipate the earliest award for a contract be in July, and that takes us into the upcoming financial year for the big communications effort that was discussed. I just wanted to flag public comment from Kent Maggart on the cost of plan. I really think that needs to be answered by some kind of, I don't know, benchmarking analog, or I just don't think we can leave it sitting out there. So if
I talked to him briefly after his comments
Mhm.
at the end of the meeting, gave him my card and asked him to contact me. We would send him some information.
Okay,
I've not heard.
okay,
We're expecting him to continue to vocalize that information because I ran into him at the fitness center and I heard the same thing.
Okay.
He's still vocalizing.
And you'll hear it again after that.
I mean, part of any kind of, I guess during phase 2 of the wastewater study, you would be looking at where the construction costs, et cetera, stand in relation to
Costs and,
analogous.
yes,
Okay, all right, so that'll be documented then.
very much so.
Very good.
Do you want to say anything else about the excess funds for the SJRA? You put a 3-page document.
Oh, well,
Maybe
Well,
we'd like to hear something about that.
that was the Clip Notes version.
That's what I was afraid of.
So, fortunately,
Ryan just closed his eyes.
we had a terrific document handed out. First page, operating reserve R&R fund and an emergency reserve policy. This is from the SJRA. This was voted and approved by the SJRA board on 2014. I don't have the specific date. 28th day of August, 2014. And then it goes through documenting the memorandum that was provided for the trustees and to the SJRA board. And then we have documentation of the methodology for creating the amount of excess funds. It's a part of a spreadsheet, very straightforward. And then finally, we've got the purchase orders. So there's complete documentation as to what's happening with those excess funds. Do I have the story correct, Chris and Ed?
Okay,
So if you want that to read through at your leisure.
no, I don't particularly,
Okay.
but I would like, if you could, just a minute to explain what the excess funds are and how they're used when they're returned to the SJRA. Because that's the simple,
Well,
that's the real flip notes.
well, the retained, these are
How they
funds.
generate.
You have a budget, right? And you spend according to your budget. Now, at the end of the year, you have to do reconciliation. And that, the basis of that is what's it called? The annual comprehensive financial review, which is a report, excuse me, which is a comprehensive audit. And after 6 months, you look at your budgeted operating expense compared with any funds available, and that's how you develop your
Okay,
budget surplus. Okay. So that sits with SJRA, and then the MUDs can make a determination if they want the money
take
back
the money back.
or if it's retained for purposes such as described the delayed generator replacement and then the partial funding of a rate study, right? So every dollar is accounted for. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
No one's getting cheated.
Okay, thank you. That explains it to the general audience.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
the unwashed, okay. Counselor, do we need to recess into executive session?
Thankfully, no.
Okay. Then we go to item 18, discuss any matters for placement on future agendas. Anybody have anything?
Is the developed district resolution going to be on?
It'll roll. So
It'll be there. Okay.
Okay, I would like to add one thing. I'd like to add an election of officers to the next meeting. I do plan on resigning as president, staying on as a member. But I've taken on a number of other things recently. I'm organizing my college's 65th class reunion. I'm writing a family history and involved in a few other things. I have totally enjoyed being president of the MUD, and it's been a pleasure working with everybody who's here. I do wish my successor a great deal of luck, and there's going to be a lot to discuss over the next few years. So that is it, and you will have my resignation in next meeting at the beginning of.
I'm at the end of my Bruce. It's disappointing to hear number one, but I've always felt if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
Neil, what are you doing?
Good point.
No, if no other comments, I declare the meeting of MUD 6 adjourned at 2:24 p.m. Thank you all.